in the past, well, really since 2010 or so, we've seen about 18 new antimicrobials come to the global marketplace. And in Canada, we only have access to 3 of those. When I'm on clinical service, it's not unusual for me on any one week to want to reach for one of these antimicrobials that we don't have. And I'm certain that I'm not unique in that, even though I see a pretty specialized population. I have many colleagues who see equally, if not more, complex patients with more complex infections. And so I'm hoping what this report will do will lay out a map for the government to understand how they would be able to bring not only the antimicrobials that have already been developed to market, but also to really incentivize drug developers so that we can see newer, more, I'd say even more interesting antimicrobials to market.
That's great. And that's a great segue to our next question. So you talk about and thank you for sharing your real your experience with patients and the need for those newer antimicrobials. And something that I know that stakeholders that we work with that would find really important about this report is that it's about incentivizing access, but also incentivizing innovation. I'm really glad to see the report acknowledge the importance of antimicrobial R&D to provide those new and novel antimicrobials. So can you share why the committee determined why you pull incentive, why it's important for it to go just beyond access, but really look into revitalizing that pipeline for the future?
Yeah, I think when you look at the current antimicrobial pipeline, and there's obviously various stages of drug development, from somebody conceptualizing a molecule on paper all the way through molecular and in-lab studies to eventually larger scale human trials and post-marketing surveillance. All along that continuum, there are challenges for the developer, manufacturer, innovator, inventor. And what makes it really challenging for them to carry through, or for any one company or any one molecule to be carried through to market and for broader use, is there has to be a return on investment. It requires a lot of investment. By our estimates, it's somewhere between $2 to $4 billion to bring an antimicrobial to market. The sweet spot somewhere around 3 billion probably. And that's a lot of money. And even though from an economics perspective, if you look at it holistically, what it means to the global community, global economies, the healthcare systems, and to patients and their families and friends, it makes absolute sense. But the individual investor, the company, the startup, any of those things, to those people, it's risky. There's a lot of uncertainty, and innovators do tend to take risks, but you need to make sure that there's a pot of gold to some degree at the end of the rainbow. And when I say pot of gold, we're not talking a massive pot of gold, right? But we are talking, what we're hoping, at least in the report, is that manufacturers and developers get a fair reward for the work and the risk that they take on this. And these really are, in many ways, essential drugs. But because of those things I've mentioned and more, we don't have the tools that we had when I started in my career, right? And I think it's important for people to recognize, I've been practicing for, 25, 30 years, something like that. I've lost count. But when I started, we barely talked about drug resistance. And it was almost essentially unheard of for us to not have a drug to treat someone's infection. In fact, we used what we considered a big gun back then was a drug called ceftriaxone. And we had multiple steps past that would say, if we needed to go broader, we needed to be more, I guess, aggressive. We had drugs called piperacillin and tazobactam and meropenem, a class of carbapenems. And nowadays, The truth is that most of these other agents, like ceftriaxone or piperacillin tazobactam, in a lot of areas in Canada and around the world, there's a high chance that using those drugs, you're going to fail because of drug resistance. We didn't experience that before, but the difference now is before I had several lines of antibiotics down the road to use in backup. Now I don't have anything. And certainly in Canada, I don't have anything. And that's what certainly worries me, and I think it's what worries many people in the AMR community. But the public doesn't really yet appreciate it because for most people in the public, it hasn't touched them yet.